Welcome, listeners, to the Gold Coast Suns 2021 season preview. Now, I'm here with the main man, my mate Tom, all the way from Gold Coast. He is going to talk to me about a team that potentially, in my eyes, could be kicking the dew off cellar dweller on the AFL ladder and could be shining brightly on the outskirts of the final eight if everything goes their way. Because in my eyes, there is no team more exciting than the Gold Coast Suns and their potential heading into this season. Tom, welcome to Lace Out.
Oh, look, it's a pleasure to join you. I've been listening to you. You've been a very, very busy boy, Peps.
I've just had a couple of these to go. So, mate, I'll tell you what, I'm absolutely loving doing this with just supporters who are passionate about their team around the country. And I tell you what, I threw the burley out there. I said, give me someone from the Gold Coast region who can talk to me about this club. And your name was shouted from the rooftops as the virtual single biggest Gold Coast supporter up there. So, you know what? Like I said, as Kiss say at the start of every concert, you wanted the best, you got the best. And for our preview, we've got the best. So tell me about it. How did you fall in love with this team? That's what we want to find out first and foremost.
Oh, look, I'm born and bred Gold Coast. And funny thing, in my family, we're rugby league through and through. But as things go with families, my broken family and my stepfather's Victorian. So one day he said, look, get in the back of the car. We're going down to Carrara. There's a game of footy on. Oh, yeah, all right. No worries. We'll get the footy and we'll go down and we'll check this out. Well, totally different game to anything I'd experienced before. The Brisbane Bears' first ever game at Carrara, which they won, by the way. And I just thought, gee, this is all right. I can't play rugby league. You know, I've played it and I got belted. I've still got some scars. But I just thought, this game's great. And went to Brizzy, and then the Gold Coast sort of, it remained a bit of an AFL city, but just, with no team, it sort of stagnated for a bit. But the local teams, I still followed them. Southport Sharks is my local team. Went to Southport High. So, it was natural to sort of go for the local team. But, I was living on the Gold Coast again after living in Melbourne for a few years. And, of course, the Brisbane Bears were my team, then the Lions. And then the Lions had their big success. And then a few things sort of happened with the Lions. And I could go into it for an hour, but I won't. But I just, things like Acker, which I didn't like. I love Acker. Didn't like the way they treated him. And I was just sick and tired of Lions. We love Acker, but the Lions weren't my team. The Bears were my team. And I went along with the Lions and we had success, but they just changed. And I think a lot of Lions fans will agree with me. They just went in a different direction. It was like they didn't have succession plans in place and they just went to the bottom. Yeah. And the Gold Coast were coming along and I thought, well, I can keep following this team I've been following to the bottom, or I can follow another team that's going to be on the bottom for 10 years. And that's what happened. I love my Suns. Pretty keen on the history too, because unless you've lived in the area or you sort of follow it closely, a lot of really fascinating stuff in that short history. And I like to write about it and let people know about just some crazy things from the early days that players are beginning to talk about it now, especially past players like Campbell Brown, who's not my favourite. But anyway, I love the Suns. When they win, it's just you're on top of the world. It's the best feeling. And when they lose, you expect it. You might have a bad Monday.
You know what? It feels like the Gold Coast Suns, if they had, 160 plus years of history, you'd basically be a Melbourne supporter. A drought between wins. We celebrate the good times because they don't come around too often, and we expect to lose, especially after three-quarter time. If there's any chance of a team being 8 goals down at three-quarter time and they're playing Melbourne, hey, you're a massive chance to win it. But hey, look, I want to talk about these Suns because you've been in the league since 2011. You've already had Guy McKenna as your coach. Rodney Eade was up there. But the guy I'm really excited about is Stewie Dew. He seems to be he's starting to get it. Tony Cochrane Is there a guy?
Yeah.
Is there a guy more passionate about his team than Tony Cochrane? He just shouts how awesome the Gold Coast Suns are. He's in the Melbourne media. We absolutely love him. What's he like up there at Gold Coast?
Well, I'll give you a juicy little bit of Tony, and it's very recent. As you know, the games over the weekend were just scratch matches, and they weren't televised or anything like that. But a lot of clubs got a lot of fans saying, "Well, look, just give us your feed. We just want to see some. We're desperate to see some footy. So the Suns and the Lions put out quarter by quarter the raw feed. Well, the Suns camera was just above the members at Metricon. And Tony Cochrane is giving the umpires plenty, you clown, it goes both ways, mate. And he's got a very distinctive voice, so it's him. Even for a scratch match, he's passionate.
Very distinctive.
Yeah. Oh, he's just and that. I mean, if he's saying that in the first quarter of a scratch match, imagine what he's like. And I've seen him in full flight. Imagine what he's like in a game where it's on the line in the fourth quarter. He just goes off. He's brilliant. But he defends the club in every facet.
And he's the type of guy that you want. You need someone barracking for, especially for that club who they haven't had the best of starts. So much potential. You had one of probably the greatest player up there for a number of years in G. Ablett Jr. And I'll ask you from your opinion what his legacy was. But over the last, I reckon, 3 years, I think since Stewie Jew's come on board, there's been a bit of a turn from trying to just get people who want it to be a retirement home and get a good salary to getting people to come up. And it seems to be that you're getting a good nucleus of players who want to stay together. And I think he's very much, if you don't want to be here, go. But we're building something here and we really want you to be part of it. And we're going to go through some of the names that I've gotten written down here. I've got 3 lines in and I ran out of space because that is how awesome you've got everything. But G. Ablett Jr., what was he like up there for the Suns in his time in your eyes?
Well, look, for us Suns supporters, we're sort of, there's 2 Gary Abletts. Well, we know that. There's 2 Gary Ablett Juniors for us. So there's the guy who really came in and showed all the young fellas how to play, and he won some great games for us. And, of course, in 2014, the team was just, skating on top of the ice, just doing wonderful things, belting teams. And he was Brownlow favourite after 10 games, Then in the Collingwood game, he does his shoulder, and it's the team lifts to win the game without him. And you're thinking, could we do it? But a couple of other key injuries, and no, we couldn't do it without him. Then after that year, Gaz just seemed to disengage a bit. He spent a lot of his weekdays living in Melbourne or down in Geelong, and often didn't train. And he'd just turn up for games. And he was a bit like I don't know if you remember in the 80s where Jeffrey Adelson used to rock up at the game in a helicopter. Well, in rugby league, Wally Lewis used to rock up at the Gold Coast because he played a couple of years at the Gold Coast in rugby league, and he used to rock up in a helicopter and then play. He was captain coach. He played, half the game, and Gaz was starting to dial in things like that. So by the time it was time to go, a lot of people were like, thanks, mate. Other people were like, on your way, and his final contract, which was front-ended. There was a bit of aftertaste, but all in all, 7 years of one of the very best players ever, and it was a gift because it raised the profile of footy on the Gold Coast and in Queensland, and the junior participation is through the roof, and the Suns are starting to get juniors through the AFL academy system, and they're top-notch players, and some of them might not have played AFL, or they might not have been driven to try and play for the Suns unless Gary Ablett came. So the GWS went a different way with getting a few different players. Suns went for one big player, and it didn't translate into success.
Yeah, and it also helps when you pick up a player that can actually play the game, like Israel Folau.
We had Carmichael Hunt.
Hey. I don't know.
We went there first.
I played footy for many, many years, mate, and I can honestly say I never was able to win a game after the siren. he can say that he has. All right. So, you know,
and he's played four codes or something.
Exactly right. He wasn't the worst. Okay. If you put Flower versus Hunt, I think you would have got more value out of Hunt, especially from the Queensland market but yeah, you're right. It was that 2014 season where you were looking like you were going to make finals for the first time. He goes down with a shoulder injury, and then probably from maybe the next 5 or 6 years, it was just struggle street because you had to find your feet again. But I tell you what,
well, they got rid of the coach that year too. So those two things: Gaz's injury, and then deciding, well, it's time you didn't make finals in 4 years. And in retrospect, give Bluey another year, give him some more support. See what you can do. Yep. But instead they went down the Rodney Eade track, which is a whole nother story. But, you know, maybe a bit like Gaz, Eade had his positive influences, but he wasn't the coach for the team at the time. And now we've gone through a second rebuild in, you know. But no, we're at the other end of it now. So, yeah, you're right. You're right about Stuart Dew.
Well, let's look at last year. Let's sort of have a bit of a reflection on last year. So you finished in 14th position. You had a 5-11 record. Which doesn't make sense because there's 17 rounds. So unless I missed
the draw.
I missed the draw. That Stewie Dew, now he's going into his fourth season as well too. From a trades perspective, you lose 2 metre Peter, which is a bit of a shame because I didn't mind 2 metre Peter, but just wasn't getting a game because there was another guy who was, you know, Ben King. Mr. King up there. So when you got him, you hold him out. Rory Atkins comes in. Olive Markov comes in. Pierce Hanley retires. Anthony Miles retires. George Hall-Smith retires. You know, there is a little bit of movement around there. But what I was really excited about by moving into the next phase of it is that you've got 8 players over the age of 28, which I look at the 28 and over bracket is, you know, that's where people start to move into their twilight. Now, you're in a really good spot. You're in, you know, a hell of a lot better than teams like Geelong, West Coast, etc. But you've got 12 kids equal to under 19 years of age. And when you run through some of those names, they are going to be absolute superstars. So I think you're exactly right. You've got that nice mix of that top end. You've got that nice mix of that youth coming through and that sort of middle tier who's been there for a while. They've done the hard yards. They can give them those young bodies some support around the ball. It's really looking nicely. And a guy who's also into his 4th season as coach, who is now building a solid relationship and a solid coaching philosophy with those kids. They're all coming through together as one group. Your eyes light up for them a lot more than some of the other clubs that we're previewing this year.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, number 1 to 49 on the Suns list, I'm excited about because you can kind of you can group them by age, and that's definitely valid. Another way to group them is who would you pick first in your best 22, and there's probably 15 or 16 guys who select themselves. And then there's another 15 or 16 blokes who are in the mix. You can only pick 22, but in previous years, the Suns have had maximum 25, 26. As soon as you get 3 or 4 injuries, then you're delving into your development players. Yep. Well, last year there was no development. So Stewie Dew was stuck with the guys who he knew could do the job, and he didn't really, unless it was someone like a Rao or an Anderson, he didn't really want to mess around with guys who weren't ready. Yeah. So a lot of guys missed out on playing any sort of decent footy last year. So in some respects, the top guys have moved forward, and then it's that final 15, 16 guys at the bottom of the list, which is now a lot of new guys that are really exciting to see what they can do in the VFL. Because that's the real thing for me is in the past, the Suns have had a huge amount of injuries and they're forced to blood these guys who now have all this experience, mostly losing, so that's not great. I think Ben King played 15 games before he played in a win.
That's right.
And I don't know if that's maybe made him fire up, you know, because he's definitely a fiery young fella.
I love him.
But, you know, Matty Rao played a win in his second game, and he was the reason. So, you know.
Oh, no, and it's one of those things like you look at your list makeup and you're exactly right. You've got 11 guys on your list that haven't played a game yet. Now, they probably would have got maybe a game last year if they had some development underneath playing those Queensland or that Northern League, but that wasn't available. Like most of the secondary comps were just obliterated last year. So he had to go with what he's got. Right. But, you look at some, like I said, the names on this list just blow me away. Like I've just written these down at random, not in favoritism, but if you have a look at names from a young person's perspective, you've got, obviously that Matt Rowell apparently can play a little bit. You got Anderson, Lukosius, King, Ainsworth, Fiorini, Weller. You've then got people like Tuke Miller, David Swallow, who's been there since virtually day dot. Jared Harbrow, can I just say, there's a guy who, if he does not make the AFL Hall of Fame, and I'm saying this, I know, but just for what he's been able to do, I would love for him to get 300 games because he has been almost heart and soul of that team. He was playing good football down at the Doggies. He decided to make the change, move up to Gold Coast, and he has been sensational since joining you.
Well, he was playing finals footy with the Dogs, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was playing finals football.
He's played no finals footy ever since.
I know, but the thing is that he's setting people up to play finals football. That's leadership. 258 games, like that is leadership as far as you can go. You've got then, I'm a massive fan of Alex Sexton. I just think that he is so, I think, underrated. If he was in Victorian team or one of the other teams, he would be, one of the best paid forwards because he just doesn't seem to go missing. He's just ever reliable. Jared Witts has been an absolute sensational choice as captain for you because he just leads from the hunt. And then you've just got other ones that, that have been around the traps a little bit, but they just bring Zach Smith's been around a while. Rory Thompson's been in there. Lockie Weller, they made a massive trade for him a number of years ago, and he really started to find his feet last year. Hugh Greenwood provides support. Jacob Townsend provides support. Sam Collins, absolutely love him. There's just so, wherever you look, there's just excitement. You've got grunt, you've got skill, you've got pace, you've got, between your towers at the front end and at the back end. When it all comes together, it is going to be awesome to watch. And it was actually, there were times last year I thought that from a Gold Coast perspective, you weren't getting beaten up that you had been a number of years before that. You're actually seeing out games. And it happens with the youthful leagues. They tend to die out a bit. I didn't see it as much. And it lasted a lot longer into the season. Normally, probably about halfway, the wheels start to fall off. Probably lasted a lot longer than it did in the previous year. So that's actually an excitement side of things from my perspective that I like. How did you see it? How do you see everything shaping up?
Well, starting from what you just said, I'll go back a little bit and then I'll come back to what you said. So when Stewie Duke came in, he was actually it was a big rebuild in the front office at the Suns. So not only do they bring in Dew, who's a level 4 coach, which is the sort of trendy thing to do. Yep. A lot of them are level 4 these days, but at that time, I think he might have been the 3rd or 4th. Luke Beveridge is the first level 4 coach to win a premiership. So if you think of it in that way, well, these guys, I think Adam Simpson or maybe the second. And of course, you're a Demon supporter, so you've got your level 4 coach in there. And Stewie Dew was going to go to Melbourne, but decided to stick around and look for a challenge.
Yeah, I think what happened with that, and that's if you talk about the old Gwyneth Paltrow sliding doors analogy, we wanted him big time down at Melbourne. I know that for certain. And the Swans said, nah, we're holding him to his virtual contract here at Sydney. And he went because he ends up with the Suns. Yeah, because he would have been an assistant, and it was almost like they didn't want to swap him for a like for like. If he was going to be made senior coach right there and then, they would have had to let him go because it's a career advancement. But because it was just another assistant,
that's right.
That's why they didn't let him go, and jobs come up. At the Suns, and it's going great gun. So go for it.
That's right. Well, he's now brought a few of those Sydney guys from that era of 2012 to 2016. So Heath Shaw won a premiership. It's not Heath Shaw, Reece Shaw won a premiership, and then was a coach in the 2016 grand final loss. But that Sydney team was minor premier. Josh Franku was at Sydney, went down to Adelaide, and Stewie's got him up. So he's reassembled a bit of the dream team from Sydney, and that's the style. We're like Sydney B, but we're not like Sydney are now. We're like they were, 6 or 8 years ago, and that's great because there's a great. If you want to sort of try and emulate a culture, the Bloods culture is second to none, really. But also, Stewie Dew came up under Clarko, didn't he?
Yep.
Clarko was assistant coach down at Port Power. Clarko was also coach at Centrals, and that was Stewie Dew didn't have the greatest career early on. He got dropped a lot of times, and he went back to Centrals where Clarko was the coach. They won a premiership together at Centrals before they won the premiership together at Port, and then Clarko got him over to Hawthorn where they won a premiership because, Clarko saw that leader.
And I've mentioned it many times over the years. If you haven't done so already, jump on YouTube and just type in Stewie Dew 2008 AFL Grand Final. It is the best cameo you'll ever see. If you want to see a guy who you look at him and go, he should not be playing just due to his size, etc. Nah. And the way he turned that game on its head was sensational.
Oh yeah, I'm assured that he likes to tell the players all about it.
And you know what?
He's living off it.
And you know what? If I was him, I'd be living off it too because he's got the medal around his neck. He's got 2 medals around his neck, and there's not many people that get to have one, let alone 2.
At 2 different clubs too. But what I was going to say. What I was going to say is they also appointed John Haynes as their general manager of footy. He'd come over from he's had a number of roles, North Melbourne back in the day and Western Australia in the Waffle. So he was a key placement. The other bloke was Craig Cameron. Craig Cameron spent time as a list manager or in the list management team at Richmond. Yep. So he's responsible for a lot of their selections or in the room, and also GWS. So those are 2 clubs that are really renowned for their, they're just brilliant on draft night. So he's really brought in this group of talent the last few years. And also managed the list and sent a few players to other clubs, moved a few players on who might have been given a year or 2 more in past regimes. Yeah. And he's completely churned the list with there's barely any players left and only a few years gone by. And the players who are left are champions like Swallow and Harbrow, and Rory Thompson's been injured for a couple of years, but he's dead set elite on his day, and we're hoping he gets back mid-year. So, and you mentioned him. Go on.
No, I was going to say, and one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier on, I want to quickly point on it. Having Reece Shaw up there, I think is the best thing for him and the best thing for football. With everything that he was going through, for Stewie Dew to say, hey, mate, come up with me. You're going to be here as a support. You're going to be a development role. That's what I need. I need someone who can develop these players. He's basically got 2 senior coaches up there now. Like that's just awesome. That I wrote with me. That's really good to see.
I wrote an article and said, I said that Reece Shaw would never coach again. And 2 days later, Stewie Dew puts him on as the development coach. So I was wrong, but I was right because I don't think Reece is head coach material necessarily. He may come back into, he's from the coaching family. We know that. And they're from a very successful family of footy players. But it's what he brings in that personal relationships, which with a list of 49, the club, what the coaching staff were missing was a guy who can go and talk to a player one-on-one, be blunt when he's got to be blunt, give him a shoulder to cry on when he needs. He's perfect for that. And he did that at Sydney, and they really rated him at Sydney for doing that. And then he went to North, and they really rated him for doing that. And then they made him head coach in 5 minutes. Yeah. So that was wrong. He knows. He made a blunder. It's not that long ago that he had the boots on, Reece Shaw. So, he's gone from zero to hero, and now he's kind of had a little time off. But I think the elephant in the room is a lot of people are coming out now and talking about depression, talking about mental health issues, and coaches must have the worst of it. Oh. You know what I mean? Danny Frawley's an example. So for Reece to be able to come back in and work straight away and not be out of the game for a couple of years like Hurdy or something like that. Yep. It's great for him. And I was waiting for the Suns to announce their final coaching slot. And I thought of him initially, but I dismissed it. But no, he's come in and already you can just see it. You only get snaps of videos and stuff, but he's at home. He's got his young family as well, which a lot of the coaches also, a few of the players have young families, which was never a thing. Imagine a club where no player had children.
Yeah,
You know, you can't build a culture with that unless your families are intimately, intertwined with the day-to-day, week-to-week goings-on of the club community. How can the players really invest? Whereas now, the practice match on the weekend, there's no commentators. All you can hear is the players' kids all going crazy. It was amazing.
And I think what you said,
there's a lot of them now.
Is exactly what you mentioned when you say a community. And that community that builds culture, etc. You think about your close circle of friends. You grow old together, but then your kids start to grow old with each other, and that's what it's all about. And it wasn't there for so many years, and now you're right. You get the right. Once again, if you can get, I've said it for years as well. If you get the off field right, the on field will then flow in that direction as well too. And
absolutely, and they lost sight of that in the early years.
They did, and it's probably because you don't know what you don't know. And so when you go up there and you try to set up a new club, you're doing the best thing. We get the best players. We'll get a coach who's been with them for a while, Guy McKenna. He's been around the traps. He knows the stuff. And it just didn't, whether it was the facilities, whether it was the culture, whether it was, you're right, did we get the wrong people early on up there, such as a couple of the names that you mentioned, Brown Dog, Jared Brennan, Carmichael Hunt.
Well, Carmichael Hunt was he's pretty well connected with his old private school mates with the marching powder. So he kind of derailed a few sons' careers there. Of some of those players are still ongoing in other clubs and have redeemed themselves, but they couldn't stay. No. And that sucks because a club like Collingwood would be quite forgiving of that. But the Gold Coast decided we can't have anything to do with anything that's bad press. And so they moved on a big chunk of players who were involved in that scandal. Yeah. They took their time about it because they wanted to get a bit of value at the trade table so they could take it to the draft. But, some guys who I watch them play against us now, I think, if you were still in the team. But anyway, you got to let them go. Yep, they weren't good for the culture.
But you know who is good for your culture? Is your 2020 BNF Sam Collins. What an absolute gun he is. What a pillar down back. You just got to love a guy like that. You got Tuke Miller, Jared Witts came third, Hugh Greenwood, Brandon Ellis. See, and this is what I'm talking about. People who are coming up there for the right reasons. I think it was Hugh Greenwood's first season up there last year. Brandon Ellis, first season up there as well too. Noah Anderson, we know about. Lockie Weller come across, Will Powell, and then Bowles and Lukosius. So it's a nice mix of the old and the new coming in, and that's the blend that, hopefully can go further again.
Yeah, well, look, when we lost Lynch, when he walked out, the players told him what they thought of him on the night that he announced he was leaving. It was in the middle of the season. They stripped the captaincy off him. They said, if you're going to do this, you don't deserve anything that you achieve from here on in. You haven't earned it. Yep. And the young players stood up. Guys like, I don't want to out anyone here, but guys like Braden Fiorini and Jack Bowes really stood up and just said, we love this club, but if you're our captain and you're telling us that you're leaving because you're sick of losing, well, we don't want you here. And he only came back to the club for the BNF, which he didn't win. What the club did at that time is, instead of, how Geelong GWS had this argy-bargy over the free agency, right? Yeah. Well, the Suns were all set. We're going to challenge this. We're going to match the bid from Richmond. Mm-hmm. Richmond's going to have to give us all their future picks, and it's going to be a disaster. Yep. Richmond come back and said, we'll give you Corey Ellis and Anthony Miles. Yep. And we'll I think it might have offered Townsend. Anyway, and we'll give them to you for nothing. And next year, Brandon Ellis, he comes into free agency, and we're probably not going to be able to offer him a contract. Yep. Suns went, all right, well, we'll get a couple of players who are experienced. They can boost us up. They'll be good for training standards. We save all this money we're going to pay Tom Lynch, and we'll just go to the draft. Then they got rid of Maisie as well. They got Ben King, Jack Lukosius, and Isaac Rankin in that draft, and they had a whole bunch of money because they'd been mismanaging their salary cap
Yep.
Which it happens when you have injuries, right? So when you get injuries, you play 39 players like Collingwood did last year, and there's hundreds of thousands of extra dollars you got to play all these fringe guys who are suddenly playing 4 or 5 games each,
Yep.
and then your salary cap's blown out. So the Suns had to go and get rid of a whole bunch of players, and the players they brought in, they've got good character. They've got heaps of talent. They're super young. But I noticed you didn't mention Isaac Rankin. He's the next Acker. And he's just as talented.
I missed him. Like I said, I got 3 lines in, and then I had Lukosius. Rankin, he played his first game against the D's last year, kicked 3 and was almost best on ground and got him almost across the line.
Oh, I think he had the game on his boot and messed it up.
And that was an oversight. But what does that say about your list if I'm missing someone like that? Who just
exactly?
Yep.
He's a superstar, but they had to sort of hold on to him for a year and just say, hold on, buddy, we need you to really get your body into AFL shape so you won't break down with soft tissue injuries and this and that. Kept him back. He was frustrated, but every time he tried to overextend himself in a NEAFL game, he'd do his hammy or something. But we've only seen the very, very beginning. Tell me this, would you be surprised if I told you that Matt Rowell and Isaac Rankin haven't played in the same game yet?
No, because Matt Rowell dominated 5 games of footy.
And then the next game.
And then the next one after.
And then Rankin came in the next game.
Well,
for his debut.
And you know what? You get another preseason into these kids as well too. I think people forget about how important a preseason is now. If Rankin has had not a full preseason for maybe last year with his injuries or whatever. If he's had a full preseason this year, it's just going to set him up for success, and they don't have to start him 5 weeks late. They can virtually bring him in. King gets another preseason into him. Rao gets another one. And all these young kids just get another preseason of fitness, but they also get to learn another 12 months, if you know what I mean, of good habits from your Harbrow, from your Alice, from Townsend, people who won premierships who can say, this is what we had to do. These are the extra little bits and pieces or the extra sessions that you need to do if you want to make yourself stand out from the other 17 clubs. So
Brandon Ellis.
Yep.
Brandon Ellis came out in the week and said, there's all these guys who want my job. The Suns had no wingers, just no players. I mean, Sexton was tried there for a while. Shawnee Lemons was played in the wing for a while. Mm-hmm. No real natural wingers. And a lot of players played through there. Tuke Miller, Ben Ainsworth, and they're good, but just not. And even Pierce Hanley, he's a halfback. He's a defender. He's not a wingman. He'd play on the wing, and it just wasn't right. Well, guess who was playing on the wing on the weekend? You had Ellis on one wing and Jack Lukosius playing on the other wing. And the Suns' game plan was to get Jack one out, kick it to him, and then he always looks like he's got all the time in the world to pass it, like Jack does. And he was just gaining meters and meters, and he would put it on the chest of someone 45 meters away, just like with someone chasing him, just like it was, a practice match. Well, it was, but he was just nailing guys like there was no pressure. He's just cool as a cucumber, and he made even more meters gained from his possession on the wing than he was from doing the kickouts, playing as a back pocket. So we're going to see something different from Jack Lukosius this year. I think he'll be a swingman. I think we're going to see Jack playing up, back, down, forward, up, back, out on the wing, go on the bench, and then just get thrown wherever he's needed, and just be his delivery is as good as any.
All right, I'm going to ask you about it's sublime, but I have to ask you about the man who's on everybody's lips right now. It is Mr. Rao, because let's be honest, he's played 4.5 games. He's touted as your next captain, next Brownlow medalist, next Coleman medalist, next Norm Smith medalist, next Rising Star, Michael Tuck medalist, or basically he's going to do everything this year. You saw him in 4.5 games. What's we spoke about it on a couple of the podcasts ago, where probably since Chris Judd is the only player being able to come in their first season and just dominate like he did. Like, let's be frank, he did dominate 4 and a half games.
He even his first game against Port, he was one of the only Suns players who put a hand up, and some people were saying he might even sneak in a vote. You know, the umpires might have felt guilty for a team getting flogged, and Rowell was one of the best on the ground for the Suns. Look, if I told you that he's kicked 8, or maybe it's only 6, he's kicked 6 goals, 0 behinds, and 3 of them were on his wrong foot. And all of them were match winning.
Oh yeah, not bad, not bad. I don't think they, and I think they only won one more game for the year with him not playing, or maybe
2 more.
Yeah, 2 more. Sorry,
2 more. But it's the those games were they were significant in what they represented, but they were, I think, North Melbourne and Sydney, who didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. So Matt Rowell leading the Suns to a victory against the West Coast. I was with a West Coast buddy, and he was just like in disbelief that his team could play like that. And they weren't bad. The Suns were just brilliant. And Matty Rowell was just backing up. It was just brilliant. He's one of those guys who I wonder what his ceiling is, because if this is it and he's never going to get better, well, that's fine. But if he's going to get better...
He's played 4.5 games. He's reached his ceiling and he's already dominating. if he doesn't do anything else after that, we're fine with that. Oh, no, it is scary how good he can get. Yeah. It is scary. All right, so let's go through. And
character-wise, he's a great bloke too, isn't he?
Oh, mate, we love him for the simple fact. How many guys do you see sitting there with a book in his hand, writing down notes, watching his players, opposition players, or whatever, and he's just like a sponge. He just wants to absorb everything. It's like when you take your kids down the lolly aisle at the supermarket. They just want to take everything in. They just want to have everything. They want to taste everything. They want to get to know what it's all about. He's the same when it comes to footy. He just eats, breathes, sleeps, oozes football, oozes class, and a great. He's the type of guy you want to have your daughter bring home, because you're going to be able to talk.
Well, my daughter's 9. I guess he's about 20.
Mine's 12.
Probably maybe not for 10 more years.
Let's just go in context if we go from that perspective. All right, let's have a couple. Let's have a few shots into 2021. All right, so. We've gone from 2020 and we're looking at 2021, and we've discussed a few things that have happened so far over the off season and almost just leading up into this point. Where do you see the improvement coming from for your Gold Coast Suns this year?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because there's one area in particular where the Suns have just always been weak, and that is when an opposition's medium-sized forward comes in, like a Robbie Gray or a Jordan De Goey or Dusty Martin, come in and just absolutely destroy us every time. We don't have a defender who can do that. I mean, Pierce Hanley, a little bit hit and miss, fast enough, but maybe not. Didn't have the natural kind of inclination to be in the right position because he was a convert and all that kind of thing. He was a better sort of, he'd break away off halfback, and that's all well and good. And Adam Sard, same thing. He could tackle, but he's often miss. This year, we've got 2 guys who are going to slot into the back line. Oleg Markov.
Oh, yeah.
He is a presence.
What a pickup. And
do you know who his dad is?
No.
Yeah. Do you know who his dad is?
Who's his dad?
His dad's Dmitry Markov, the Olympic pole vaulter.
No.
They defected from Belarus? Just before the 2000 Olympics. He's like top 5 in history in pole vault. He's like, I think he's just under 6 meters. Is his best, which is just amazing. I would have won a gold medal at like 20 Olympics. He comes from that. That's his history. He was born in Belarus, right? He came here when he was a little like a toddler, and he's reportedly the fastest player in the AFL. And just the little footage I've seen, obviously I've seen some Richmond footage, but little footage I've seen over the weekend, he was burning Brisbane Lions players, just running right through the guts. And, loving to see it.
And as a sexy mo. You got to love a good player with a good sexy mo. He's got a good sexy mo.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and there's players who don't like Ando.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You got to know your limitations. Don't go growing a mode if you're going to have that fluffy caterpillar crap hanging under your schnoz. So you mentioned Markov. Who's the other one that's going to set it alight this year?
So Shawnee Lemons has been an interesting one for a number of time because he just couldn't kick. So as a forward, he had the pressure, the tackling. He was just a great little player, but he couldn't hit the side of a barn on a full moon night. He was almost the worst. It was almost the worst goal kicking accuracy. Jared Lyons has the worst ever goal accuracy within the sample, and Sean Lemons has improved just a little bit, so he's the second worst ever. He's a defender, but in the early years he just couldn't quite find his home. They're going to try him in defence this year. He will hit players. He will take down forwards who withholding the ball, and he will defend all day until there's nothing left. He didn't have the best year last year, but that's because of COVID, and he became a dad for the first time. And so like a few AFL players, they just decided not to travel because they might get stuck somewhere and not be able to see their newborns or whatever. I think Steel Sidebottom's year was just railroaded for the same reason. So, yeah, he's the other one. Look out for him. Sean Lemons, I think he's probably about 25, 26 now, so he's mature, and he's entering that age bracket that a number of Suns players are entering, which we haven't had them. We've had like 28, 29, 30. We haven't had that 25 to 28 age bracket. Now we've got a bunch of them like Lockie Weller and Dave Swallow and guys we brought in like Brandon Ellis. I'm excited about all of these players. I don't really think that any of the guys other than Markov who've been brought in, like Jacob Townsend's a good player.
If he's playing backup.
Yeah, if he's playing, it means Sexton's out. Yep. So good backup. There's one guy who you mentioned earlier. We talked about a bit, and I think you're about to get up to it. So I'll leave him out. But I've got Isaac Rankin as the breakout star for the year. He showed a sample, a taster. 22 games this year. He will turn it on in the midfield as well.
I love it. No, I'm like I said, I keep harping on about it. Once, if you can, like I said, it's almost like a high-powered luxury vehicle, but it's just not tuned just yet. Like the parts are all there, and it's built well, but it just isn't humming. But once that car gets run in a little bit and everything greases up and finds its place, you're going to be quick. You're going to be strong at both ends. You've got experience. There's a lot of good things to come. There's a lot of good things coming your way, but unfortunately, we have our breakouts. Who's going to be the breakdown? Who's going to be the one that you look at going, this might be your last season, mate?
Well, I know you said he's your favourite Suns player over the journey, but Jared Harbrow, there's two things. One is he slowed down a little bit last year and he didn't have the greatest preparation. So a bad year. He's had a better preseason this year. But the way he's talking, this is it.
Yep.
And he might even last year have hung up the boots. But what happened is the club's brought in the last couple of years, they brought in a few Indigenous players and a couple of guys from PNG or their families. One of them's his second generation. His mum's from PNG. The other one's little Ace, who, if you don't know who he is now, wait till you see him. He's a little cracker. Huego Paul Ohio.
I'm glad I got you
Probably haven't pronounced it properly. Everyone calls him Ace.
We'll just call him Ace. Yep.
Ace. He's a cracker. He came through with Connor Buderick. And the two of them were inseparable, except for Ace hadn't finished school. And just because he's an international player, you don't have to draft them, right? Yep. So they kept him in the academy for an extra year. He played all the scratch matches. He was playing against AFL listed players all year last year. He was playing NEFL the 2 years before that. He's got all this experience at senior level. He'll come straight into the NEFL team and be banging on the door to the senior team as like a forward pocket. But we've got plenty of them. but the guy who Jared Harbrow was particularly interested in was Joel Jeffrey, a Northern Territory Indigenous kid. And last year, Mally Roses came down. The Indigenous kids from the Northern Territory, because they haven't been playing at any level, they don't have a NEFL team anymore. Yep. They just seem to take an extra couple of years to come on, and Jared Harbrow is really interested in mentoring those guys. So if he's playing AFL, it means that his body's right, he's needed in the team, and he's a great spiritual leader. But if he's not playing AFL, you'll know that he's there in the VFL team to teach those guys by example. It's sad but true. I don't think he'll get to the 300 like you hope.
He's got 258. Yeah, he's going to be a season short, unfortunately. And he's
250 is great. 250 is great.
I'll take one. I'll take one. You take one.
Yeah.
So your concerns, where do the concerns lie? Because once again, we've gone over so many positives that we've spoken about.
Yeah. Yeah, the tall defence. Yeah. So our best tall defender in the last 10 years has been Rory Thompson. You listen to Jonathan Brown say there's good Rory and bad Rory. Good Rory can lock down any gorilla, any team, Hawkins, JK, any of those guys. Yep. He's kept them to zero. Bad Rory is when he's carrying an injury. And that's when he can have some bags kicked on him.
I just love the name. Bad Rory, good Rory. Yeah.
Well, this is Jonathan Brown, good old JB. He was one of my favourite players when he played, and he can be an absolute knucklehead on the commentary, but it's great. His colour commentary is just great, and I like that good Rory, bad Rory from him. I won't claim it as my own. So if Rory can't make it back this year, that's 3 years out of the AFL. So if he can make it back and he breaks down again, fingers crossed that he just comes back in July or August and strengthens that back line, because the Suns, they've got Sam Collins and then there's a few young guys.
Yeah, so you can't have you don't want your BNF going down, because it just, and that's one of those things, no matter how good your forward line is, unfortunately, the way the game is being very defensively minded.
Yeah, and if Sam Collins was playing on the second best forward, he would go into Brownlow calculation. He'd take 10 instep marks a game, and he'd be Stephen May quality. He's almost Stephen May quality already. He just like I said, Mike Maisie had Rory. Yep. If Sammy Collins could have Maisie, I mean, I was Devo that Maisie went to the Demons. You've got a great player there.
Thank you. No, I'm especially when he came down, and after the first year, I think he learned a bit of a lesson from all of that. Yeah. And he is just, the last 2 seasons, I thought he was stiff not to be All-Australian, even squad last year. That was shattering, because between him and Harris Evans,
that's right.
I think he had the least amount of goals kicked on him in the league, if not second.
Yeah.
Was rarely beaten all season. And there was plenty of ball going down the Melbourne backline throughout the entire year. Yeah, he's had he just wants to have a better year than last. So, that's what we want to hear. He's another leader. He's actually turned into another leader that we really needed. So for you to say that, I'm really happy with that too.
Well, when him and Lynch were the co-captains, it wasn't any secret that Stephen May, common mistake. Stephen May was the real captain, and Tom Lynch was given the captaincy because the club didn't want to lose him.
Fair enough.
And they still lost him anyway.
Yep,
he didn't have the leadership that Stephen May did. Although Maisie could get in, and we're talking about the Suns here, but Maisie, he was just frustrated. You'd see him castigating players after a goal, and it's bad. The optics are bad. And I'm glad to see him, although he had some troubles in 2019. And I know a lot more about that. And, I respect his privacy. He had a lot going on for a fairly young bloke. Yeah, and he's come good.
Yep, he's come really good. He's really good.
He's come good. Good luck to him.
So,
and the Suns got Ben King out of the trade.
Everybody wins.
The Suns got Ben King out of the trade.
Everybody wins. He goes all right. He goes all right for a young fella. Now, Champion Data, regardless of what we all think about him, have ranked your what's it called? Your draw. I've just gone blank. Your draw to be the 13th hardest Okay, you're only going to be playing Brisbane. You're going to play Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Carlton, Sydney, and Essendon twice, which in my eyes is not a is a bad mix. I think you got plenty of opportunity from Essendon. There's a lot of people rating Sydney at the moment. I sort of don't see it, and there's a lot of people rating.
They had a good draft.
Yeah, but a draft is a draft. You know, everybody can have a good draft, as whether they can play. Every club has a great draft if you think about it. And
Collingwood had a good draft too, but Collingwood are a dumpster fire waiting to happen. I just listened to that podcast, and I encourage anyone listening to this.
They were pretty good, weren't they?
Totally. They were honest, and that's what you want. The Suns are now at the stage where we've got honest fans too.
Yeah.
And we didn't really in the early days have that kind of thing. And you've got to be brutally honest about the downfall of your team. Look, the reason they've got us as a middle of the thing there, I think when you come so low on the ladder, you don't have to play, Richmond and Port and the top teams twice, but because we're Queenslanders, we've got to play Brisbane twice anyway.
Understandable.
So that's tough, but there's no travel.
No,
so that can be good for your game before and your game after as well. So,
well, it's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that. When we had a chat with the Adelaide guys, I said the same thing to them, but they end up last and have got the second hardest draw. So that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So it's just, I don't know how they work it out. It's once again, it's the same when it comes down to the free agency value of players. It's that magic special sauce that they have that works it all out. So we don't worry. Okay.
Absolutely.
Where are the Suns going to finish this year, ladder wise? Come on, Mr. Roker, put the agates on the chopping board. I say it every single season preview. Where are they going to finish and why?
I'm going to say ninth, and I'm saying ninth.
Yeah, take it away from my club.
It's very Richmondy, but Richmond aren't very Richmondy anymore, so someone's got to have it.
I don't mind being Richmondy now if we can win 3 out of 4.
I'll tell you what, if my team were playing in the final round and had to win by a certain amount and another game was going on, and that year a couple of years ago where the Demons were in the 8 and out of the 8 and in the 8, that's character building. You don't want it to happen every year. It's character building. No, that's why I say ninth, but I'm hoping middle 6. So
yep, okay.
7th or 8th to be great. If it was lower than that, I wouldn't be surprised. If it was out of the middle 6, if it was 13th, 14th, well, that's not improving, is it?
Yeah.
And that'd be when there'd be question marks over Stewie Dew, which you don't really want your coach. I don't think he's got any issues whatsoever. To be honest, I think he's in a really good spot. And I think if you want to, before we have a get into who you think is going to take it all out, etc., a massive indicator coming out of how well a team is actually going is looking at their percentage. So last year you had a percentage of 90.63%. Okay. Yeah, it was better than that until the last game.
Yep. Now you ended up 14th. That was still better than Essendon, the Hawks, Sydney, North, Adelaide. It was just a fraction behind Fremantle, Carlton and GWS, like 5% at the most. So if you can get it to evens, 100%, you're attacking just as much as you're stopping. So if you can, chank that up a couple of extra points, that's going to be a couple of extra wins. You're going to be definitely sitting in that middle 6. So I think that's totally achievable. Everything has to go right for you guys to play finals.
Yeah.
But once again, you're going to have to jump from 5 wins this year to at least 12. So you're going to have to find 7 wins, mind you, within a bit of at least a longer season, but you're still going to have to find another 7 wins on top of what you did last year. So
there's 5 more games, and three of them you expect to win those. So that's where you're going to get 3 more wins, but it's still a long way. A couple of like the Demons game, the Bombers game, you give us 7 wins there. You're starting to get towards it. No, well, not saying that the Demons didn't deserve to win. I'm just saying it could have gone either way.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. The only game where 666 has actually made a difference to the result of a game.
I know, and this it seems like Melbourne, who actually, if you're going in the last couple of minutes, you'd be confident because Melbourne's a very good. Yeah, no, really, okay, it's happened twice.
If you ever need to
twice to the Suns now.
Come and see us. Come and see us if you want to pinch a win. All right. So that's where we've got Gold Coast. Let's round this bad boy out. So who do you think is going to take it out of everybody? Who is your tip to take out the 2021 Premiership if it's not going to be Gold Coast?
I'm just saying it's going to be Geelong.
Yep.
They've recruited to win. That Jeremy Cameron deal really cost them draft picks, but I don't think they were going to be using those draft picks to win now because they were going to go to the draft. So it'll hurt them in a few years, but they've recruited right now to win. And if they don't, well, you've got to say Richmond. But I think the same top four with maybe the Dogs biting at their heels, but I can't predict the top eight. Like this probably 14 teams. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say if you look at it from last year, I reckon anybody down to Fremantle. I don't think Essendon, Gold Coast. Actually, I should put Gold Coast to win it. I don't think so, but push for the 8 maybe. I'd say, look, Port definitely, Brisbane yes, Richmond yes, Geelong yes, West Coast. Everything really has to go right. St Kilda, everything has to go right. Western Bulldogs, everything has to go right. So I reckon you're probably looking at maybe 5 teams in it to win it.
Yeah.
And then you've got probably the next 5, maybe down to Carlton. You just don't know. Look, you've got to get it doesn't really matter if you think they're going to win it now. You just got to make finals. And as you've seen what's happened over the last number of years, anything can happen once you get there. Who's your Brownlow tip for this season?
I have to go with Matt Rowell. I have to.
Yep.
If he's got 9 Brownlow votes from 5 AFL starts, going by that average, he's going to win it by the biggest margin ever. I think Lachie Neale will give him a real go, but then again, Lachie Neale's had a pretty good run of things, and you never know if he's going to be, quite that good or attract, tags or whatever. But yeah, Matty Rowell for me.
Yeah, I think that if you've got a guy if you're going to have Gold Coast winning, let's just say 10 games next year, 12 games, and he's BOG in 8 to 10 of those, you're right. And he's only going to get better, which is really
fair chance, isn't
What about a Coleman? Do you have anyone, a Coleman medalist, which is a little bit difficult these days because the way we just don't know how teams are going to line up, etc. But is there anyone that's caught your eye to think, you know what? Might stand out and hopefully kick a few bags because we need the big bags.
Mate. I'm gonna go with another Gold Coaster here, but a former Gold Coaster in Charlie Dixon. I just think Port are going to be really good, and I think with extended quarters, it tends to be when the big guys come into it late in the quarter, and he's got bags in him. And people criticise him because he couldn't get that many goals. But last year, nobody got a lot of goals.
No, it was bloody hard to predict. Quick. Yeah, it was very quick. Yeah. Big boys didn't play, bullocking games. That war of attrition as it worked towards the end of quarters just wasn't there. It was just speed. But I reckon you're right. He's looking fit. Like he was looking fit last year. He's going to look mega fit this year. He's primed. Good pick. That's the first Charlie Dixon bit of love we've had so far this year.
Well, he's a Queenslander, so there
you go. That's what it was. Wasn't it? Yeah.
And Matty Rowell's father's born in Queensland, so Matty's an honorary Queenslander as well. So keep it in the Queensland thing. I probably should have predicted the Lions for the flag, but I couldn't stomach it.
Well, we kicked 34-21 last year, so it's not bad out of 18 games.
I mean, Hawkins did skip away. Hawkins skipped away, but he's got a bloke named Jeremy Cameron to compete with. So if the pair of them end up finishing in the top 5 of Coleman, you wouldn't be surprised. But how does one guy win it?
Well, if you remember back in 2008 when you had Buddy and Ruffy kicking 180 between them, I don't think you're ever going to see that again. If they kick 110 between them, they're going to be so far in front of anyone, it won't be out of control.
Absolutely.
Mr. Tom, you are a dead set legend. Now, where can people hear you? Because they're coming out of today going, this guy, he just doesn't know his stuff. He has got the velvet voice that could make anyone fall asleep at night. Have you got your own, I was
doing a podcast for 2.5 of the last 3 years, but I'm no longer doing that. I've I've had a bit of COVID's a bit of a funny year, so I had a bit of an upheaval. I'm actually talking to you from the sleepy little city of Toowoomba, and I'm working full time, and I just decided what I'd prefer to do is write. So you can always catch my articles on the Raw.
Beautiful. Yep.
And half the time I'm writing about the Suns. So the other half of the time, at the moment, I've got a bit of a series going on coaching trees.
Ooh,
so who were the coaches who started it all in the modern era, and who were their proteges who went on, and, you know, tracing it back from Stewie Dew to Alistair Clarkson, and where did he cut his teeth, and which coaches moulded him, and
that's awesome.
it all comes back to four blokes. But if you want to know more about it, go to the Raw and have a read of the first couple of articles in the series. I'm up to I can't decide whether I'm going to do Tommy Hayfie or Alan Jeans next. They're both legends.
Oh, I'd go Tommy.
Yeah, because he was one of the earliest.
Yeah, and
I've already done John Kennedy.
Oh, sensational. Yeah, go, Tommy. Everybody loves a bit of Tommy. Everybody loves a little white Adidas T-shirt action, which is the main thing.
Yeah, and I've got Ron Barassi there, but he's the hardest because everyone knows the main stuff, but I want to dig up the stuff people don't know.
And you know what? That's the thing why we do. That's why we've done these season previews, because we can go. You know, me and my co-host, Jamie the J-Dog Wallace, we can go in and have a bit of a chat about this. But I can tell you, there is no way we would be able to pull out the quality of Gold Coast Sun information that you have done today, Mr. Roker. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave in our show notes a link to Tom's profile on the Raw, so you can read all his articles on all his coaching trees, etc. Because if this is what he sounds like, imagine what he writes like. It's going to be awesome. But look, listeners, that is your 2021 Gold Coast Suns preview. I'm pumped. I'm really looking forward to a massive season. Mr. Roker's got a huge season planned. But Tom, at the end of every one of these beautiful season previews, I have to ask each of my special guests just one simple question. And it's simply this. Tom Roker, how do you want your football?
Oh, soon. I'm going crazy without it. I was watching the scratch match quarter by quarter with no commentary. I've been watching AFLW, which is great. But yeah, no, I'll be when I get it, I'll be watching AFL, VFL, NAB League, you name it, just to get my fix. Love it. Love it. I'll hopefully get down and watch a couple of live games, COVID pending.
You come down to Melbourne, we're going to watch the game together. But I also think he wants his football lace. Brilliant. He also wants his football lace out, listeners, as well.
Lace it out.
Hey, look, have a great evening. There's your preview. Get on the Raw.
I do want my football lace. I'll mess that one up. Ask me again.
No, it doesn't matter. You had your chance. And we'll see you for our next preview coming up. Have a great evening, listeners. Thanks for listening to our latest episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. I'm your host, Chris Pepper, and with Jamie Wallace, we give you your footy how you want it. Peace out.